questions, and we now come to the Select Committee statement on behalf of the Treasury Committee. Dame Harriett Baldwin will speak for up to 10 minutes, during which no interventions may be taken. At the conclusion of her statement, I will call members to ask questions on the subject of the statement. And just to emphasise, these should be brief questions, not speeches. Can I emphasise as well that any questions should be directed to the Select Committee Chair and not the relevant government minister. Dame Harriett Baldwin.
Thank you so much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it is wonderful to have this opportunity, thank you for granting it, to present the report that the Treasury Committee published yesterday on access to finance for small and medium-sized businesses. Now, as every member in the House will know, small and medium-sized businesses form the absolute backbone of the UK economy. All of us in our constituencies will be aware of amazing small and medium-sized businesses. In fact, 99% of the businesses in this country are small and medium-sized. So that gives you an idea of how important they are. And well over half our constituents who are employed are working for small and medium-sized businesses. So it's a really important issue, and the committee has been looking at the subject of access to finance for small and medium-sized businesses, and the report was published yesterday. And I want to highlight some of the points that we raised in our report, and this is an opportunity not only for other members to hear those points, but I hope also for the Minister to take on board those points, because no one can deny that the last 5 years have been an absolutely torrid time for everyone in terms of the pandemic and in terms of the energy price crisis. And small and medium-sized businesses have often been very much at the forefront and have experienced the brunt of those crises, with perhaps not the huge resources that larger businesses had to be able to cope. And of course, the government took extraordinary steps to provide support in terms of access to finance for those small and medium-sized businesses through those crises. But we are now in a different environment. In fact, there's every evidence in data published this week that small and medium-sized businesses are beginning to feel much greater confidence. You're seeing some real improvement there. But nevertheless, there are some issues that remain from that difficult time, but also more structurally following the measures that have been set up in terms of financial regulation since the banking crash in 2008. And so I just want to flag a few of the points that we make in our report. One is about the Business Banking Resolution Service. This was set up after the banking crisis. It was designed to provide access to resolution, mediation and outcomes for those businesses which are too large to actually access the Financial Ombudsman Service, but nevertheless had been treated pretty badly during the financial crisis. And I think it's fair to say the committee formed the view that really the Business Banking Resolution Service has not been a success. It is owned and run by the banks, which raises questions about conflicts of interest in the first place, certainly the perception of a conflict of interest. In addition, it spent about £40 million as an organisation during its lifetime and has awarded only £2 million worth of compensation because it drew the criteria for access to the Business Banking Resolution Service so tightly that very few businesses were able to qualify. So essentially you had businesses that couldn't access the Financial Ombudsman Service, that used this resolution service, had very unsatisfactory outcomes, and so we agree as a committee that it should close as planned, and that we look to the government to come up with a consultation on a new mechanism for this topic by the time we reach the end of this calendar year. Secondly, The government has an initiative called the British Business Bank. As a committee, we thought very highly of what we heard in terms of evidence from the British Business Bank. We welcome very much the announcement that the COVID schemes have been rebranded the Growth Guarantee Schemes. Recovery loan schemes rebranded and announced in the budget by the Treasury. We think that this will be an important source of credit to help small businesses grow where otherwise they will have struggled. But we noted that it's actually very few small businesses who actually even know about this organisation. So we're trying to publicise that through our report, and we do encourage the government to assess how effective the British Business Bank is every year, because I think they have an important role to play, and they are pretty successful where they are known, but they're not widely known. A third point that really concerned us in the evidence that we heard during the course of this inquiry was around something that sounds very niche but is very important, Madam Deputy Speaker, which is something that is known in the trade as Basel 3.1. So again, after the financial crisis, when Basel, the city in Switzerland, where the central bank of central banks is located, was set up, they came up with some proposals that were then known as Basel III. However, at this point, the Prudential Regulation Authority, part of that alphabet soup of financial regulation that was set up after the crash, are consulting on tightening the criteria for lending to small and medium-sized businesses. So at the moment, there is a discount factor of the risk on banks' balance sheets from small and medium-sized businesses, and the Prudential Regulation Authority wants to tighten that considerably. Now, the committee is very concerned about that. We heard evidence that that could potentially withdraw about £44 billion of lending to businesses from the UK economy. And so we urge the Prudential Regulation Authority not to proceed with that, particularly because we also heard evidence that it's not going to be implemented in the United States, and that it's not going to be implemented in the European Union. In fact, for many, many years when we were members of the European Union, we did not implement what the Basel Committee was recommending. In fact, the Basel Committee then issued a statement saying that they were concerned that it hadn't been implemented. You know, we were in violation of their recommendations, which shows that it is perfectly possible to do that. All you get is a reprimand. And so we do think that small and medium-sized business reporting factor, the supporting factor, should not be changed at this stage in the economic cycle. A fourth issue that came up in the evidence that we received, which I think has really shocked us as a committee, was the extent to which banks are simply closing bank accounts of businesses across this country. I expect every member in this House will have had a piece of casework from one of the businesses in their constituency being told that their bank account is closing with absolutely no reason or notice by their bank. We heard, in fact, that during the course of 2023, because we asked them, the banks confessed they've closed over 140,000 business bank accounts. Now, obviously, there can be perfectly good reasons for doing that. There will be businesses that don't reply to any information from any questions from their bank. There will be businesses that perhaps are suspected of money laundering or actually money laundering. But we also found that banks can use terms like risk appetite or reputational risk to close the bank accounts of organisations and businesses that we would think were perfectly fair part of the fabric of this country's businesses, like amusement arcades, for example, can struggle to get access to a bank account. Pawnbrokers can struggle to get access to a bank account. And perhaps most alarmingly, Madam Deputy Speaker, we heard that in one of our evidence sessions from banks that even if you're in the defence sector, you can have your bank account closed, or you can struggle to open a bank account. And this is often to do with the shareholders of banks wanting to observe the environmental, social and governance rules. Now, we all think that environment, social and governance is a good thing, but it can lead to some of these unintended and inadvertent consequences whereby defence companies are effectively debanked and can't get access to a bank account in this country. And I'm sure everyone here today would recognise that actually the security of this country, the defence of this country, is something which is a foundation for environment, social and good governance, and therefore is not something that should lead to struggling to get a bank account. So we urgently request that the Treasury table the legislation it has promised to table around debanking, and we are looking forward to that happening before the end of July. So that is something that we are keen to see. I see my 10 minutes are up, Madam Deputy Speaker, and so thank you for your attention, everyone, and I hope this has provided food for thought for members across the House.
Yeah.
Dr. Thérèse Coffey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I am on the Treasury Select Committee, and can I commend my right honourable friend for her great chairmanship of that committee. In terms of, I think one of the things that was quite interesting, and I appreciate this is leading to a question, my honourable friend has already mentioned about the need for the transparency, and I'm delighted the Treasury will bring that forward. But I was particularly struck by how difficult it is to open accounts, even farmers taking multiple months to do that. But most important of all, the PRA, by taking the approach that it is doing, is going to choke the growth of many small businesses, and we need our small businesses to become much bigger businesses for the prosperity of our country. I wonder if she would agree with me that the PRA really needs to understand how important this is to make sure that the entire country prospers, and that will only happen if small businesses prosper.
Dame Harriett Baldwin.
Well, I do agree with the point that my right honourable friend makes, and I think it is really important that we separate the whole background in terms of inflation, which is the worst tax on our economy, the important steps that have been taken by the Independent Bank of England to raise interest rates to make sure that inflation gets back into its target zone. That all seems to be on track, so that monetary policy has been tightened already, and you see that in terms of the environment in which our small and medium-sized businesses are working, because they have been squeezed by higher interest rates, and they are seeing that their acceptance rates for credit, the evidence we received it has fallen from 80% down to 50% today. So it doesn't feel like the right time to be tightening access to finance for small and medium-sized businesses through this change in regulations either, and particularly it doesn't feel like the right time to be doing it unilaterally when the EU and the US are not following the Basel 3.1 rules.
Yeah. I thank the chair of the I didn't see. Keir Mather.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm also a member of the Treasury Select Committee, and I thank the Chair for all the hard work on this report. Just on the overall question of SME confidence in their ability to access finance, I think the report raises some really interesting figures of there being a £95 billion finance gap in large high street banks lending to SMEs between 2015 and 2022. That's alongside sort of softer pressures of SMEs having fear of rejection in lending and a lack of trust in the lenders themselves. Could the Chair please provide an assessment of how she feels that appetite looks across the rest of this year and going forward, and what some of those tools are that are at our disposal to deal with that inherent caution in the SME lending market?
Dame Harriett Baldwin.
Thanks to my excellent colleague for his question, and he is absolutely right that we did receive evidence during the course of the inquiry around something that I would describe as perhaps financial apathy. That actually sometimes small businesses choose not to borrow, choose not to grow, In fact, only 5% of small businesses seeking lending would even consider shopping around to another provider if they were rejected by their main bank. And I do think that there is work to do there in terms of encouraging and guiding. And the British Business Bank, as I cited, I think has a very important role, and it's not well enough known. It is probably holding back the growth of these many excellent small businesses, and it's something that I'm so proud that our committee's been able to champion.
Peter Grant.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful to the Chair of the Committee for making the statement today. She'll be aware that one of the main reasons why a lot of small businesses have to rely on bank funding is because bigger businesses don't pay their bills on time, and all too often they don't pay the bills at all. A lot of small businesses, particularly in construction-related work in my constituency, tell me they sometimes have to wait 6 months or more to get paid. That then increases the risk factor for a bank because it's much more likely that small business will fail. Has our committee looked at, or do they intend to look at, the problem, particularly in the construction sector, for small businesses who don't get paid for the work that they're doing?
Dame Harriett Baldwin.
Well, I think the Honourable Gentleman makes an absolutely excellent point that will be recognised by everyone across this House as being a challenge for those who, work closely with people in small businesses. Getting paid by those creditors and bigger businesses is absolutely the bane of life for many small business owners. And I know it's a piece of work that has been happening a lot in the business department. I also think government itself needs to show and lead by example, that when it's paying for services, that it's a very, very prompt payer, because yes, we did hear this in the evidence to the committee, that this continues to be something that small businesses are frustrated by.
I thank the Chair of the Select Committee for her statement and for answering the question.